the customer is so much more knowledgeable and is coming to us with so much more information that we can no longer just hand a solutions engineer a script and say, follow these 10 steps and you'll sell a car. Because that doesn't work anymore. It's a much more complex. They need to be able to handle so much more of the customer's needs and provide so many more solutions in terms of and the experience. Are you providing that kind of experience that makes them go talk about us on social media?
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, I have an amazing guest. I'm so excited to talk to this guest. We had to reschedule a couple times, but that's okay, because it's so worth it, because I get to spend time with the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Ms. Fleming Ford. How are you today?
Hey, Jason. So excited to be on Strategy with Jason. I always learn more on this podcast than I think I bring to your audience. But
I don't think that's true, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, man, we got some cool topics. Like, I've just, I was looking at my calendar, and, my kids have access to my calendar, which is always kind of a fun thing because they ask me questions, right? And they're like, Dad, because Fleming, it's a unique name, right? So they're like, who is this? Like, is that a first name? Is that a last name? Like, and they ask questions, and I'm like, oh, let me tell you, I'm so excited about this meeting I'm having this week, right? So me and my kids talked about you a little bit.
We have more conversations about my name, and I started out in sales, and most of every sales call was, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name again? Yeah. So
well, I think there might probably some benefits behind it, because it's not one I'm going to forget, right?
Which is good and bad, yeah. But it does follow me. But I think why I was so successful in sales and automotive is everyone thought I was a dealership.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
So when I would call back in the day, when you called GMs and they had, their receptionist would kind of cut you off. I'd be like, this is Fleming Ford. They're like, I'll put you through. Because they thought I was doing a dealer trade.
What a hack, man. I love it. That is so
awesome.
For
all of you, yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Name, pick a brand, yeah.
My mind has just been blown, but that's absolutely awesome. Well, you know what? It's actually a good segue. I love kicking off our podcast with little origin stories. And before we get into our topics, we've got some super cool topics we're going to get into. So let's kick it off with a little origin story of Fleming, how you got into the automotive industry.
So, Jason, I actually have always been an advocate for human resources, people strategies, workforce strategies, anything human capital. Started off selling it and was selling, with a consulting group, anything to help with retention. And of course, who has one of the biggest retention problems but automotive? And ended up at an NADA when I was really young. And of course, I think our booth was hire right or, avoid bad hires. And so we were pretty bombarded with GMs going, how do you do that? So started off in behavioral science. That led me to, okay, we're hiring right at the dealership, but we basically aren't treating them right. And so then really diving into employee engagement, how do we keep the people? How do we teach the leaders to be more effective at being, building teams people want to be part of? So been doing it quite a while. And I think automotive is fascinating just because of the complexity of the people and the energy of the people. So it's always been kind of a science to me to dive in and unpack how we can help the dealership.
You know what? I'm with you. I love the automotive industry. I've called it many times the island of misfit toys. But that's the challenge.
We fit right in, Jason.
We do. There's you can get into this industry like the path to get in. It can come from many different directions. I mean, I've worked with people that have had MBAs. I've worked with people that sold pot in school and, dropped out, became car salesmen who now own dealerships. There's just...
It's fascinating.
It's fun. Yeah. It's what kind of creates this chaos challenge. There's always enough kind of chaos to it that generates this challenge that I feel like people like us, we love and we lean into, and because, for us, and this is a perfect segue into our first conversation, we both do a lot of consulting. We work with a lot of different dealerships. So we get to see a lot of different individuals and their perspective on leadership. There's a lot of different types of leaderships out there. And I love the word leadership. I really do, because for me, it's a title that you earn, not one that you're given. In our industry, we're very good about giving titles. You're a general manager. You're a GSM. You're a general sales manager. You're an SM manager. Like, we love our acronyms, right? 4-letter words and 3-letter acronyms. That's what we love. But the word leadership cannot be given. It has to be earned. And I know you got a lot of thoughts and opinions on this. So let's kick that off. How do you feel like we earn the title of leadership?
Well, and to your point, I think leadership is a journey. So, having been a leader for large groups and small groups and worked with a ton of leaders, and I probably the most fun thing I get to do is one-on-one coaching with GMs. And it is a constant journey, because as you just talked about, the complexity of people that are on our teams, and throw in pandemic, throw in social, unrest and civil unrest and politics and all the different generations. Even if you were a great leader 5 years ago, probably what worked doesn't work now. So it's a skill set we have to keep growing and developing. And as you said, just because you have the title doesn't mean you're a leader. That's just positional. You have the ability to boss people around, but they're not following you.
Well, you know what? And I love to say, I love that you bring that up, because, our industry does a good job of managing. It's all about management. We're just going to manage tasks. We're going to manage the process. We're going to manage our tech. We're going to manage our people.
Yeah.
We're just going to manage the crap out of this to profitability. But both of us have been in hundreds, if not thousands, of dealerships that we've probably visited. And there is some very, very noticeable difference between businesses that are being managed versus businesses that are being led. What are some of the differences that you've seen over the years?
Well, and I think by nature of who rises up in a dealership, it's always been the hardest worker, right? The hardest producer. There's a problem with managing, though, because if you're using management to manage tasks, manage operations, manage the people, manage the numbers, you run out of capacity. So today's general manager is not just in charge of the operations any longer. Now they're in charge of fixed. Now they're in charge of advertising and, attribution and SEO. Now they're in charge of all their brand and their community and developing their people and growing their people and all their relationships with the OEMs. So that's a pretty big job. And if you're managing and not leading, I think it's exhausting. So I have some very, very successful GMs who are frankly just burnt out and exhausted and don't know how to go to the next level because they can't take on anymore. And that's where leadership comes into play compared to managing.
And when I think of, managing a team through leadership, it's like, to be a leader, you must lead by example. That seems to be the saying that sticks in my head the most. It's like, okay,
people do what people see.
Right?
Yeah.
And
I love the GMs who are like, I'm going to go, take a little nap back here and you guys work harder. So, I'm going to go golfing. Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually a good, good thing to point out. Leadership is, it's actually quite quiet.
Real
leaders are not, you know what I mean?
Real leaders actually are great listeners. Mm-hmm. And I love that you said that, Jason, because I think there's this image, especially when GMs get into their role, we have this image of the superhero GM who runs around and energizes an Energizer bunny and is, involved with every single thing and won't let go of things. And that is the opposite of quiet. It's very loud and it takes the energy out of, I think, the GM, because if you can get to a place where you're like, tell me about that. What would you do, Jason? If you were in my shoes, what would you do? If you start to empower your people with questions and listening to what they're going through, asking their opinions, building that connection, that's when people really, they elevate themselves and you get people who are working for you to go to the next level. And it takes things off a GM's plate.
Yes. You know what? I 100%, I've done a little over 500 podcasts, which is giving me just an amazing, yeah.
That's a lot of podcasts.
It's a lot of podcasts. But I've had the opportunity to have some amazing conversations with what I consider to be some true leaders in our industry. And I tell you, I like identifying patterns. Maybe even as a kid, I put blocks together. It was always in patterns. I liked patterns. Yeah. And that is definitely one pattern that I find true leaders are very intimate with their team's whys. Like, they know their whys. They know why that person does this the way they do it, right? They know that person is saving for a college education for their kids. They know that one is trying to get out of their mom's basement and purchase their first home. They know that one is getting married in 6 months, and the reason that they're trying to hit these financial goals, they know what their why. They're fundamental, like why they show up in the morning, why they hustle, why they push the hard they do. And they seem to take a little bit of ownership of that and really kind of promote and develop and manage off of their why, not necessarily the company's why. Does that make sense? Have you seen the same?
Oh, I think if you don't understand their why, then they just are a cog in your wheel. And when they're a cog in your wheel, they're just doing the very minimal, which is called, disengagement. When employees just come in, do the minimal amount, enough to float by, enough to not get fired, but they're not really bought in because you're not bought into them and why they're there. So when you can connect to their why, then you really get into their intrinsic motivators without having it to be like, well, I'm paying you, so you better do what I say. It's connecting their why to your why. That's a very big success. I actually have a sheet, Jason. We'll have to put it in the show notes, but it's a worksheet that I have that's know their why. And it's about, 20, 35 questions just to kind of prompt conversations, because sometimes that's a harder thing.
It is.
To learn more about the other person that's on their team. And a lot of leaders are like, I'm too busy, I don't have time for that. I'm like, you don't have time not to do this.
Exactly.
But something I recommend, is when I'm working with them is like do a group conversation. So if you're the GM, pull a technician, pull the receptionist, pull a sales rep, start breaking down those silos, have breakfast with the GM in the morning, and they get to just talk. It's not the GM talking, it's him asking questions, her asking questions, finding out the why so that they can make a better culture and start tailoring towards what their people need and want.
And I think as a leader, when we become more intimate around their why, there's something there's a byproduct that can be built off that, which is a perfect segue into our next topic, which then I see this infamous unicorn that we call culture.
Ooh.
But it doesn't always kind of seem like we love our buzzwords in our industry. I mean, culture seems to be one that's always kind of being a buzzword, and it's kind of this always kind of slightly out of reach. This unicorn that I need to try to kind of work towards, but I think with the real leaders, culture is a byproduct of them becoming intimate with their why and leading their company through whys. But I'd love to kind of get your take on how we generate, we maintain, and we continue to develop the culture.
Well, in culture, everyone has one.
Yes.
The question is it helping you reach your goals, attain your objectives, or is it blocking you?
Good point.
And culture can either be by default or by design. And, leaving it up to the people to create is a very risky endeavor. So, you really have to have some intention. You have to have, there's a lot of foundational elements that need to go into what does your culture look like. Some of it's going to happen naturally, but some of it we do have to design it and direct it and kind of shine the light on it. And that takes a ton of work. If I go in and renovating a culture, I'm going to look at what's working and where do we want to go? What do we want this to look like? And then, so many, as you said, it is kind of like that, kind of tagline in the industry. People are like, I want to fix my culture. And I'm like, do you really? Because that's not something I'm going to do in a month.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's a long game. And I was just talking, do you know Sherry Schultz? She's the head of HR at Walzer. Mm-hmm. And she said, do you want to play rugby or do you want to play chess? And I just think that's a great way. Like, you can push culture, what you think, you can run around talking about it. You can put it on the wall. But chess is the long game, and it's very thoughtful and it's very intelligent. And, there's going to be some rugby in there, but we all enjoy a good push, but this is a very well-designed type of endeavor to go down, and it takes a lot of work, which is why I think a lot of times, as you said, people are like, it's over there. Like, I don't want to quite touch it, because a lot of it's uncovering some things that maybe we don't all want to face or deal with.
No, you're 100% right. It's long game, and I've seen that. I've seen that as a pattern. With many leaders and dealerships that do maintain a strong culture, is that they're playing for that long game. I tell a lot of people, because they ask me, like, what is it like owning a dealership, Jason? And I was like think of it like a marathon that never ends. Right?
Right.
There's no finish line, by the way.
No.
And there, every once in a while you might see the mirage of a finish line, but it is just simply that, it is a mirage. But to be able to maintain, running of a marathon, you have to find yourself a pace.
Yes.
And I think that's where we get discouraged around building culture, because like we feel like we can't maintain that type of pace. But, if I've never run a marathon, by the way, but I've talked to people that have run marathons, and
good for them.
and it's all about a build-up. Like, you
Yes.
run one marathon, you get comfortable at a pace, and then you push yourself a little harder and you find another pace you're comfortable at, and then so on and so on and so on. And that's, I think, the way you ultimately kind of end up building a culture, is by playing it that way. Your thoughts?
And I think that's when people say to me, do you really, they want to change culture. I'm like, do you really?
Yes,
because
exactly.
It is a marathon, and it's a little bit every day. It's the people's mindsets, how to change, how we do things around here has to change, which is a lot of communication. It's a lot of accountability. It's a lot of setting standards of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's like, we go, all right, we're going to be very customer focused. One of our values is customers are number one. What does that mean? Because that means different things to different people. It's kind of like if I say, let's get a sandwich, are you talking like, a hoagie or a po' boy or a grilled cheese? So you have to really design the standards and expectations of behaviors. And then you have to really recognize and reward them when you see them. And that's why it really takes some time defining, who am I? What's my value proposition? You have to hire to it. Then you have to manage to it. Then you have to reward to it. And then you have to relook at it all the time. And then your customers need to be, what's the value proposition? Why are you going to come work for me? Why are you going to buy from me? That's all about culture. And we can't really reach our strategy and get off that, kind of constant wheel without really having a whole team that understands what we stand for, what you expect, what your vision is, what you believe in, so that we're all going in the same direction. Well, and that's why culture is so important.
100%.
Especially with what's happening in automotive, with how fast it's going.
And just things changing so quick.
It's hard.
Well, and look, and I love the fact that you brought up team, right? Because the team is ultimately what generates, or executes on the culture, the direction of the culture, right?
I've yet to see a GM run a store by himself.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I know he wants to. She wants to, but yeah.
And one of the topics
get rid of all these dumb people. My job would be awesome. Yeah.
Well, when I think of a team, I like sports, particularly I like baseball, and I think maybe the reason for this is because it's slow enough where you can actually see the strategy get played out in real time. Right.
Sure.
You can see, why you have that type of pitcher on the mound. You can see where the, infield or outfield will adjust their position, based on the batter that's coming up to play. You just see this phenomenal, but to be able to achieve that, man, you have to have some seriously diverse team. All right, with all many different talents. And, I think which is a perfect segue kind of into our next topic, because we're going to talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I will say that, the dealerships I've had the opportunity to interview with, some of the most successful ones have had very diverse teams that bring many different talents and attributes to the team that just makes it just a much better all-around team. And I know this is a big topic for you, so I'd love to kind of get your take just as an industry, how do we maintain this? How do we get to this place where we can achieve it? I guess execution is the key, right?
Yeah, and I think with a lot of intention, because, there are some dealerships that are making huge strides in DE&I, and, diversity's coming. Like, the population of America Right now in K through 12, it's minority. It's already over 50% is the minority representation. Mm-hmm. So the talent pool is drastically changing. And yes, definitely for the better. But let's face it, we are in a very white, male-dominated industry. And, having grown up in it and fought my way through, it's like I even had some biases. I was like, toughen up, Buttercup, if it's not for you. And that's really fair. We do need a lot of different opinions. We need a lot of different, thoughts and ideas and experiences. Diversity even means to me, not just, female or minority representation, diversity from other industries. Like the fact that most everybody's grown up in this industry, like we're getting behind other industries because we're not being able to bring leadership in from other industries.
Even other ages. Just think of age groups, right?
Yeah. Well, even it's definitely coming. And, and I've worked in bringing women into automotive for probably, over 10 or 15 years. I was with a Toyota program, and it was, making the dealership women friendly. Mm-hmm. And, really working with salespeople to be able to include females in the conversation, which is still, hysterically enough, a struggle. But I always say, think about if you were a white male who went to work at Victoria's Secret. Mm-hmm. And how uncomfortable it would feel to have all female colleagues, female leadership and female customers. And everybody's like, why are you here? And even if they're nice and like, hey, Jason, we're so glad you're here. It's cool to have a guy on the team. But then, Jason, you start outselling people maybe. And then all the other ones, kind of group up and they're like, well, this isn't going to work out. So it's the inclusivity of culture. It's are we really making this a place people feel comfortable, where they have friends, where they have connections, where they psychologically feel safe, where they feel like there's opportunity to grow? Is there female leaders I can go to and be mentored by? So a lot of it is we don't have the right talent and bench strength, really, to really go diverse. So we really have to get really intentional and put some programs in place.
Well, and what I like about this is because, this fits 100% within every dealership's goal out there. We love to talk about the word market share. We talk about it very, very regularly. Okay. And for me, whenever I start talking about market share, well, it's just, to me, I go immediately to diversity. Like how... Okay. Like we all...
Do you represent your market?
Exactly. And are there places within your market that you are not diverse in? All right, that you need to be intentional.
Or if I walk in your store, do I feel uncomfortable?
100%. I love the fact
that I see myself in your store? Do I see I feel, because we're fighting that already, image brand of not being trustworthy.
Yes.
So they're coming in with walls. But if I come in and I see myself, my walls start to go down. So representing your community, if you don't look like your community, it's going to be harder to sell to that customer.
Well, and I think that's the point, is that you're selling to the customer. The customer, all right? Yes. You're not doing it for yourself, all right?
Maybe right now with inventory shortage, but
that's true.
Let's say in the future when we actually have to be a good
but this is the time that you do need to have those conversations, right? Because even with inventory shortages out there, I know dealerships that are operating very well. They're putting many pre-orders in. They're creating and banking, big opportunities, for the future. They're taking, because maybe there is a little extra time. The deals are a little bit slower. They're a little longer, right? Mm-hmm. They're taking the time to get to know their customers a little better and taking that analytics and putting it back into it. See, are we best serving our customers? But this is kind of a good segue into our next topic, because the next topic is about talent shortage, not inventory shortage. You hear that, people? This is the first time on an automotive podcast in the last 6 months you're not going to hear anything about inventory shortage. It's been the hottest. It's everything we've been talking about.
The next big problem you're going to be facing currently. Yes.
Well, I put a post out recently where I I said that we don't no longer need salespeople. What we need solution engineers. All right.
I saw that. I loved that. Solution engineers.
Well, that's what it is right now, because look, there's not inventory. I need someone to, if I'm a customer, I need someone to generate a solution, all right, for me. If it's like, it's too easy for us to say, nope, we don't have it in stock.
Right.
Well,
I'm asking past the inventory, Jason. I think at the end of the day, you're trying to help me with the problem.
Yes.
Which is, I don't quite know what car is right for me and which one I can afford, and stop selling me and start helping me with my problem. And then you are a solution engineer. So
help me find a solution. And I think about this, and like when I first got into the car business, this whole internet thing was just beginning. Like, that internet thing, it was still
never take off.
It'll never take off. I'm serious. I remember being in a meeting with my dealership. We're never going to have a website. If someone's going to learn about our cars, they're going to come to our dealership. We're not going to put cars out there with crazy, right?
Oh yeah, no pricing on the internet. Yeah.
but I think we have to kind of, for us to say there's a talent shortage, I think we have to first define what is the new talent that is required to be that next generation of quote unquote salespeople, which I still don't necessarily think is the right word to use as much as a solution engineer, which by the way is a term that I did not make up. I learned it from another I wish I did. No, I learned that from a much smarter person than me. But it makes a whole lot of sense. But I'd love to kind of get your thing. Yes, there's a talent shortage, but what should the talent look like right now?
No, and I think that's a great question, because the customer is so much more knowledgeable and is coming to us with so much more information that we can no longer just hand a solutions engineer a script and say, follow these 10 steps and you'll sell a car. Because that doesn't work anymore. It's a much more complex. They need to be able to handle so much more of the customer's needs and provide so many more solutions in terms of and the experience. Are you providing that kind of experience that makes them go talk about us on social media? Or is it going to provide an experience that's going to cause, cancel culture, and they blow up in your community with going viral about a bad experience at your store? That is putting people out on the floor, your service advisors, your technicians, anybody who's interacting with customers now. We've got to spend a lot more time investing in their skills and in our customer experience training, in our, how do we connect and build relationships with the people in our community. It's a completely different, mindset than just, going for the jugular and the kill every time. And again, that's back to internet and social media. We can't hide behind pretty advertisements anymore. The authenticity has to be there.
Yes.
And that's going to be a completely different person, different leaders, different training. I think we have to really rethink the whole model.
Well, we do. The product is no longer the primary purchase. It is who's going to solve my problem. The product should be the solution, but the person, engineering and designing that solution is the person that's ultimately going to generate the experience. And it's a different type. I think it's a whole another set of skills that I actually think this next generation is actually very well equipped to handle, by the way. So it's like, we love in our industry to always talk about the next generation. Next generations, man. They don't have any
no idea.
Work ethic. Yeah. They need to be touchy feely and pat on the back. It's not suck it up, Buttercup, check it out the door.
They want me to care about them.
Yeah, they want me to care about them. It's not enough. I just pay them. What happened to the days where I just give someone a paycheck and they're good. Now I gotta actually but no, I mean, I think what it is you're looking at the next generation is coming up is where they're very much so problem solvers. I mean, look at the video games they play and look at their connection to technology. It is just everything, there's a problem, I gotta solve it, let me do it quickly and effectively. And I think that's what we're seeing in the customers. The customers are looking for us to solve a problem faster and faster and faster. People seem to think that they want a faster transaction. I don't think it's a faster transaction they're looking for. I think they're looking for someone just to solve the problem faster, and maybe. And
I also want to enjoy it.
Yes.
How about this is an amazing, exciting time. I'd love to enjoy this purchase instead of feeling threatened or thrown in the box or, all the tricks of the trade. We have to be laser focused on how do we make this an enjoyable experience? Yes, efficient, but also really something that they go out. I would love to not be replaced by, buying cars online. We need to make this such an amazing experience, which means different leadership, different training, different culture, different expectations. I mean, it's kind of, I love the young people coming in because they're saying, why are you doing it that way? And stop, I think the most expensive line in automotive is, well, that's how we do it around here. Mm-hmm. And let's stop saying we tried that before. Let's empower. How about believe that people have their best intention is to do a good job for us? How about believe in the people and they will rise up to what we believe, and asking them to look at how we're doing things and bring their kind of more efficient new way model. And let's try things, because, the person who figures out how to bring Gen Z, the digital natives, into the workforce and make them love working in automotive is going to skyrocket past their competition.
Well, it's about experience. We have an entire generation that values experience above anything, almost. So they are definitely the right people to employ, to hire that. But like I said, the talent's so much different now. We're not looking for someone to sell something. Look, at the end of the day, no one actually wants to be sold. Okay, and then we went through a whole, a series of relationship selling, which I love that we did that. And now, even though I don't think people value much the relationship anymore as they used to, which is fine. They're just saying, look, like, I don't need to have a relationship with you to make this size of purchase. All right, what I do need to feel is I need to feel connected and engaged with you. All right, connection and engagement generates an experience for me. I want to feel like you know me, like I want to feel like I'm pulling up to the hotel and they come out and they go, hello, Mr. Harris. Me? Like, I want to be known. I want to be felt. So look, I think when we're looking at talent and we're looking at talent shortage, is there a shortage of talent based on what we needed for the last decade? Or is it time to switch it and say, look, there's new talent. There is a pool out there, but we have to be willing to focus on the experience more than anything.
Well, and I think we have to, there's so many things to dive in there. We have to really relook at who we're hiring, the hiring process, and do you know what you're looking for before you begin? Gone are the days of hire 10 people and hope one works out. The skill set is going to take longer to develop. So you really have to spend more time hiring the right person, making sure you're going to invest now more money into these people. And I need you to work on engagement and people strategies and retention strategies so that you're not okay with high turnover, because we need to keep the skill, because it's hard, just like any customer, it's more expensive to go get a new customer than it is to keep a customer, right? So Same thing with employees. And to know that they're going to need better skills, they're going to need to represent us, our brand, our culture, that's going to take some time. So you better also be spending time on how am I going to keep them engaged, keep them growing. So I'm not constantly in this, turnover cycle. Otherwise, we won't have the skill set. And in being able to keep these people is going to be critical. It's like kind of mission critical for future proofing our teams.
And a lot of that has to do with development. Like, people want to feel like they're being developed through, through their experience as an employee. It's no one just wants a job anymore, right? They want an experience. No, they want
to have purpose. I think that I was just reading why people are like, "What's the big leave now?" And it is being disrespected, having an abusive manager, having no purpose, no real why. And, and actually inclusivity, especially with everything in the news, not feeling like I can be my authentic self, not feeling like I really belong, which can kind of come down to simply, do they have a friend? Jason, it's almost like if not that you want to, but if you want a divorce, but you love your group of friends that your couple hangs out with, you may not go for that divorce because you don't want to give up all the friends. So I might put up with a jerk boss if I work with a bunch of people that I really like and I connect with, and we have similar goals and values and, commitments to each other. So that people side, we've got to put more time and effort into going forward than we ever have before.
Look, we've said this many times in our industry. We are a people, process, and technology industry, and I think the people have to come first, and there's a large emphasis on that. And some of the best operating dealerships out there are doing
They're
this.
amazing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're not saying that not like as
It's
an industry as a
inspiring.
whole, we have some room to continue to grow and move, but there are some amazing operators out there.
They like
right
knock
now
my socks off.
that they're just doing amazing stuff like this. Like, I know we're towards the tail end of our conversation today, but I like this topic that we have, a talent shortage. I know we went a little bit farther down this rabbit hole, but I love doing that, you know. But I'll finish off kind of with one question. For anybody out there that may be thinking of getting into the automotive industry, what advice would you share with them?
Well, first, I would encourage it because it changes lives. The opportunity, the growth, the connections, the support of this industry is just kind of above all else. But I would say make sure you're finding the right culture that has a place where you can grow and that believes in their people as their kind of primary asset. Because it's just as important to not only pick an industry, but to pick the right leader and dealership to go put your efforts into. Because, this is going to be an exciting time and it's going to be changing. And I think there's going to be huge opportunities for growth. So make sure you're going someplace that's going to kind of help you reach your potential.
I'm 100% with you. Take your time, as
great time to take your time.
Yeah. As much as be prepared for the interview, also make sure that you're interviewing that business as well, and that it fits within, because like if it's not a match, it's not a match. It just doesn't necessarily work. I love that. It's great advice. Thank you, Fleming. Hey, for everybody out there that's watching and are listening right now and would love to connect with you and follow along with your journey, what's the best way to do so?
Happy to reach out and talk with anybody. My email is Fleming, FLEMING @cultureignited.com, or you can reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's Fleming Ford on LinkedIn. So would be happy to talk with anybody and help anybody out.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been
Always.
So much fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
Thanks, Jason. Always good to jam with you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.